This episode is supported by AnalystKit.com. Thousands of tried-and-true calculations mixed with AI to find you the best stocks in a single click.
If you find a $100 bill on the sidewalk today, your brain will deliver this quick, pleasant rush of dopamine. I mean, it just feels great.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a great feeling.
Right. But if that same $100 bill falls out of your pocket and just, blows away in the wind, behavioral economists have actually proven that the psychological pain you experience will sting roughly 2.5 times harder than the joy of finding it.
2.5 times. Yeah, it's a massive difference.
It really is. And that evolutionary glitch in human psychology, that asymmetric weighting of gain versus loss, is really one of the primary reasons so many otherwise brilliant people fundamentally mismanage their money.
Yeah, it creates a massive blind spot for us. I mean, we operate in these modern, highly complex financial markets, but we're doing it using hardware that was optimized for, surviving on a savanna thousands of years ago.
Right, running from lions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We are biologically wired to overreact to immediate threats, which, well, it makes the cold long-term mathematics of investing feel completely counterintuitive to us.
And that tension, that exact tension between math and human nature is exactly what we are tackling today. So, welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
We are talking directly to you today because we have a very specific mission. We're pulling apart this incredible source that outlines the 7 unbreakable rules of finance.
And these really are foundational rules.
They are. Now, if you've been managing your own portfolio for a while, you might actually think you know the rules. But our goal today is to strip away the noise. We want to look at the underlying mechanics of investing and prove that wealth creation isn't some esoteric dark art dictated by Wall Street insiders.
No, not at all. It's a structural game, and it's governed by a very clear, immutable rule book.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because we are basically handing you the ultimate playbook today to make smarter, more confident money decisions, whether you're optimizing a mature portfolio or just, looking for a place to start.
Right. Because the most valuable knowledge in finance is always practical pattern recognition. Today is really about clarity. It's about cutting through that relentless information overload that plagues modern investors.
There is so much noise out there.
So much. But once you truly understand the physics of how money moves and how it multiplies, you stop reacting to the daily headlines. You start actually architecting your outcomes.
I love that. Let's start with that fundamental physics then. Because before you can win the game, you have to understand how money actually moves. And that brings us to rule number 1, which is opportunity cost.
Yes, the bedrock of all financial architecture.
Exactly. The source frames this not just as a passing thought, but as an absolute constraint. Like every time you deploy capital, you are not just making a choice for a specific asset. You are simultaneously making a choice against every other potential investment in the universe.
Economists define opportunity cost as the value of the next best alternative that you gave up.
Yeah.
It is this invisible structural drag attached to your money. When you lock your money into something you can't easily sell, you're surrendering agility. And the source gives a very tangible example to illustrate the gravity of this.
Oh, right. The vacation home example.
Exactly. Imagine you are saving up for a major lifestyle purchase, like a vacation home, and you've narrowed it down to either a beachfront property in Florida or a ski cabin in Colorado.
Right, and you only have a finite pool of cash for this. If you pull the trigger on the Florida beach house, the opportunity cost isn't just the price tag of the property.
No, it's much bigger than that.
It's the Colorado cabin. It
Yeah.
is literally every single winter ski trip you will now never take because that specific money is permanently locked up in Florida real estate.
Yeah,
You just can't have both on the same dollar.
you really can't.
It's like, to use a smaller example, it's like going to a restaurant and ordering the steak. The opportunity cost is the salmon you didn't get. Choosing one thing actively destroys your ability to choose the other.
That is a perfect analogy. And that physical constraint forces a critical shift in how we evaluate assets. Advanced investors, they don't ask, can I afford this?
What do they ask?
They ask, what premium am I surrendering by tying up my capital here instead of somewhere else?
Wow. Yeah, that's a totally different mindset.
It is. And analyzing that trade-off leads seamlessly right into rule number 2. If opportunity cost dictates how you position your money, rule 2 dictates the energy of that money once it's deployed. We are talking about compounding.
Compounding, the engine block of modern finance. And we aren't talking about linear growth here, right?
No, definitely not linear.
Because if you earn simple interest, that's just a straight predictable ramp. Like $50 a year is $50 a year forever. But compounding is where the timeline completely warps.
What's fascinating here is the underlying philosophy of that math. Compounding represents a definitive inflection point in the life cycle of wealth.
How so?
Well, it is the exact threshold where your money achieves autonomy. It stops being this static thing you traded your time and labor for, and it becomes a dynamic, self-replicating entity. It starts working for you.
To visualize this, I think we have to throw out that old rolling a snowball down a hill cliche. I mean, it's fine, but compounding operates much more like gravitational pull in astrophysics.
Oh, I like that.
Right. When an object in space is small, its gravity is negligible. But as it gathers mass, its gravitational pull gets stronger, which allows it to pull in more mass, which further strengthens its gravity. Eventually, the growth curve isn't a straight line anymore. It's this parabolic U-shape.
And the human brain really struggles to intuitively map that U-shape because we naturally navigate the physical world linearly.
Yeah, we expect things to happen in straight lines.
Exactly. So in the early stages of compounding, at that flat bottom of the curve, the accumulated mass feels basically insignificant. The absolute dollar amounts generated by the interest just seem trivial.
You're looking at your account like, wow, I made $3.
Right. But as the yield begins to compound on itself, the acceleration becomes violent. The curve eventually points almost straight up.
And here's where it gets really interesting. You don't actually need to build some complex spreadsheet to figure out when that violent acceleration is going to hit.
No, you don't.
The source brings up this brilliant heuristic called the Rule of 72. It's basically a mental math trick to instantly calculate the escape velocity of your money.
It's an indispensable tool.
It really is. You just take the number 72, divide it by your projected annual rate of return, and the result is the exact number of years it will take for your money to completely double.
So if you evaluate an asset class that historically yields an 8% return, you divide 72 by 8 and get 9.
9 years.
9 years. That means, assuming the yield holds and you reinvest everything, your capital base doubles every 9 years without you adding a single penny of new money.
That is wild to think about.
10,000 becomes 20,000. In another 9 years, it's 40,000, then 80,000.
The compounding curve drastically compresses the timeline of wealth creation. But, and here is the major pivot in the source material, we can map out the gravity of compounding perfectly on a spreadsheet, but none of it matters if a physiological panic response makes you sell everything right before the curve accelerates.
That's the real danger.
The math is totally useless if you can't navigate the mental minefield of your own psychology. We are moving from the spreadsheet to the human brain here.
We have to. Because the primary threat to your wealth isn't macroeconomic volatility. It's your own behavioral fragility.
Right.
Which brings us to rule number 3. Knowing your true risk profile.
This one is huge.
It requires surgically separating two metrics that the financial industry constantly mixes up: risk capacity and risk tolerance.
Because they operate in entirely different domains, right? Risk capacity is the cold, objective math of your bank account. It's literally how much absolute money you can lose without ruining your life.
Right, without defaulting on your mortgage.
Exactly. But risk tolerance is subjective. It's your neurological wiring. It's how much of a market drop you can physically watch on a screen before your stress hormones force you to sell just to make the anxiety stop.
And the danger zone is the delta between those two things. The source outlines a classic scenario, actually. Think of a young, highly compensated investor in their 20s.
Okay, young professional.
Mathematically, their risk capacity is massive. They have a 40-year time horizon before they need that money for retirement. They could absorb a 40% market crash tomorrow, and their long-term models wouldn't even flinch.
Wait, if I have the financial capacity to lose money, shouldn't my emotional tolerance naturally be high? Like, why do our brains disconnect the two?
That's a great question.
I mean, if my spreadsheet proves I don't need to touch that money for 3 decades, why am I still having a panic attack when the S&P 500 drops on a random Tuesday afternoon?
That structural flaw in human logic brings us directly to rule number 4, conquering loss aversion. Your brain disconnects capacity from tolerance because of the amygdala.
The lizard brain.
Exactly. When you see a red number on your portfolio dashboard, your prefrontal cortex, the logical, math-driven part of your brain, tries to remind you about the 40-year time horizon.
Yeah.
But your amygdala, that ancient threat detection center, treats that red number as an immediate life or death threat.
This circles right back to our opening thought. We feel the pain of a financial loss roughly 2.5 times more intensely than the satisfaction of a gain.
The behavioral economics literature on this is just incredibly robust. I mean, in a hunter-gatherer environment, missing out on extra calories just meant you might be a little hungry.
Right.
But ignoring a sudden deficit, like a sudden loss of your resources,
Mm-hmm.
meant you died. We are literally the descendants of the early humans who hyperfixated on losses.
Wow.
But applying that 2.5 times pain multiplier to modern stock markets is disastrous.
It's the exact mechanism that causes panic selling. I mean, investors don't sell at the bottom of a bear market because they've, recalculated their long-term models.
No, they don't look at the models at all.
Right. They sell because the psychological pain of the drop has breached their emotional tolerance, and selling the asset is the only way to turn off the biological alarm bells. They are paying a massive premium just to stop the pain.
Which is why rule number 5 is the necessary firewall here. You must ruthlessly apply critical thinking and demand the full context of any information you consume. Because the financial media ecosystem is entirely optimized to exploit that exact amygdala response.
Because fear drives engagement.
Exactly. The source offers a phenomenal non-financial analogy to demonstrate how easily our threat detection software can be manipulated by incomplete data.
I love this part, the plane crash one.
Yes. Imagine you read a headline that says, "Most plane crash survivors sat in the back of the plane."
Okay, that feels intensely actionable. Like, the immediate logical conclusion your brain jumps to is that you should only ever book seats in the back row to survive a crash.
Naturally.
Yeah.
But it is a statistical trap. It's called the base rate fallacy. The headline gives you the numerator where the survivors were sitting, but it entirely omits the denominator.
The total number of people.
Right. What if 90% of the total passengers on that specific flight were seated in the back to begin with?
Wait, really? Oh, I see.
The fact that most survivors came from the rear doesn't actually prove the rear is structurally safer. It just reflects the baseline distribution of where everyone was sitting. Without the full data set, the statistic is totally meaningless.
Oh, yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you see this base rate neglect weaponized in financial media constantly. You'll see a headline screaming, "Tech sector sees record outflows," or "This specific asset class has crashed 30%.
Just designed to freak you out.
Exactly. The goal is to trigger your loss aversion. If you react to the numerator without demanding the denominator, without asking about historical volatility or the broader market context, you'll continuously disrupt your compounding curve based on statistical illusions.
Okay, let's synthesize where we are. We've established the mathematical laws of opportunity cost and compounding. We've installed the behavioral firewalls against loss aversion and bad logic. But a fortified mind and a perfect spreadsheet still aren't enough. And that brings us to section 3 of the playbook, going on the offensive against hidden enemies. This is rule number 6.
Right, because fortifying your psychology just stops you from self-sabotaging. But Rule 6 is about defending your wealth from external forces trying to quietly sink your ship while you aren't looking.
So what does this all mean? I mean, to me, it's like trying to fill a bucket with water from a hose, but you're completely ignoring 3 quiet leaks right at the bottom.
It's a great visual.
Right. Or let's go back to the rocket analogy. We've talked about compounding as a rocket accelerating upward, but a rocket doesn't operate in a vacuum. It has to punch through the Earth's atmosphere.
And that causes friction.
Extreme friction, extreme aerodynamic drag on the hull. If you don't calculate for that drag, your rocket will never reach escape velocity. It'll just crash back down. And the source identifies the 3 main forms of drag on your wealth: inflation, high interest debt, and fees.
The first drag coefficient is inflation. It is the silent, pervasive tax on your money. And the source outlines a brutal mathematical reality that conservative investors often ignore.
Walk us through it.
Suppose you park your cash in a safe bond or a high-yield savings account, generating a nominal yield of 3%.
Okay, your balance is growing. You feel secure.
You do.
Yeah.
But if the macroeconomic inflation rate is running at 4%, your real inflation-adjusted return is negative 1%.
You are literally mathematically bleeding purchasing power.
Precisely. The digits on your screen are getting larger, but the actual utility of that money, the groceries, the gas, the assets those dollars can buy in the real economy is shrinking.
Wow.
Any strategy that fails to clear the hurdle rate of inflation is just a slow, guaranteed march toward capital destruction.
That is a massive macro-environmental drag. But the second enemy is much more localized, and it essentially weaponizes the power of compounding against you.
Right.
We are talking about high-interest debts.
Yes. credit cards.
Exactly. The 15, 20, sometimes 25% annual rates strapped to credit cards and personal loans.
The analytical framework the source uses here is absolutely vital. You have to evaluate debt reduction through the exact same lens as investing.
How so?
Well, paying off a credit card that carries a 12% interest rate is mathematically identical to getting a guaranteed, risk-free, tax-free 12% return on your money.
And we know that a guaranteed, risk-free 12% return simply does not exist anywhere in the stock market.
It doesn't. This raises an important question for anyone attempting to simultaneously build an investment portfolio while carrying high-interest debt. When you realize that the math is backwards, that the friction of the debt is mathematically outpacing the realistic growth of your investments, you have to restructure.
You have to pay it off.
Eliminating that high-interest debt is undeniably the best, lowest-risk investment you can possibly make.
You have to shed the excess weight before the rocket can climb.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the third leak in the bucket, or the third form of atmospheric drag: fees.
This one is perhaps the most insidious drag coefficient, because human psychology tends to minimize small percentages.
Right. 2% sounds tiny.
Exactly. When you see a 2% management fee or a 2% expense ratio on a mutual fund, your brain anchors that number to retail experiences, like a 20% restaurant tip or an 8% sales tax.
So by comparison, 2% feels like nothing.
But applied to a compounding curve, 2% is a catastrophic structural leak. You are starting every single year in a 2% hole that your investments must grow just to break even.
And it's not just the 2% of the money you lose today, right? It is the opportunity cost of that 2% over decades.
Exactly.
Because those diverted funds are no longer in your account generating their own compound interest.
It drastically flattens that parabolic U-shape of your growth curve. Over a 30-year timeline, a 2% fee doesn't just reduce your final net worth by 2%. Due to the loss of compounding momentum, it can literally devour a massive chunk of your total potential lifetime wealth.
That's terrifying.
Managing fees isn't just penny pinching. It is critical structural engineering for your portfolio.
Okay, so we've analyzed the physics of compounding, we've rewired the brain's loss aversion, and we've engineered the portfolio to cut through the drag of inflation, debt, and fees. All of these principles converge on one inescapable mandate, which is our seventh and final rule: the ultimate steward.
Rule 7 is the apex of the whole framework. It acknowledges that strategies and models are ultimately just passive tools. Capital requires a conscious architect to deploy those tools and maintain the integrity of the plan over time.
And that architect has to be you.
It has to be.
The source tackles a very pervasive myth in the financial world. It's this idea that finance is just too complicated, too specialized for a normal person to manage. The industry loves to promote this narrative of, just hand it over to the experts and look away.
Abdicating responsibility is the greatest risk of all. Is finance complicated sometimes? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But retreating into willful ignorance just guarantees bad outcomes. Burying your head in the sand isn't the answer. The antidote to market complexity is continuous education.
You have to view yourself as the CEO of your own financial life. You define the vision, you establish the risk parameters, and you oversee the execution. I mean, you might hire an advisor or a CPA. They are your operators, executing specific tasks. But no one on the planet will ever care more about your financial success than you do.
No one. It is the ultimate expression of financial agency. Internalizing this rulebook transitions you from being just a passive consumer of financial products to being an active, strategic allocator of your own money.
And the beauty of this framework is its accessibility. You don't have to master all 7 rules overnight. It's about taking the first step. It's about running an audit on your current setup, finding the leaks, and applying the right rule to fix them. So I have to ask you, the listener, directly. So which rule will you start with?
And honestly, the fact that you are just tuning into this deep dive, that you are actively thinking about these mechanics, means you are already practicing Rule 7. You are acting as your money's #1 advocate.
That is such a validating way to look at it. Let's do a rapid recap of the journey today. Investing isn't a secret language. It's a game of managing opportunity, unlocking the magic of compounding, conquering your own psychology, and fighting off hidden wealth killers as the CEO of your own life.
When you filter all the market noise through these 7 principles, a lot of the anxiety just dissolves. You aren't guessing anymore. You have a playbook.
You really do. But before we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that blends these rules together in a slightly new way.
Let's hear it.
If loss aversion dictates that we feel the pain of a loss 2.5 times more intensely than a gain, wait, let me rephrase. If we feel the pain of a loss so much more intensely, and opportunity cost means every inaction is actively costing us potential, could our primal biological fear of losing money in the short term actually be the exact thing guaranteeing we lose out on the magic of compounding in the long term?
That is a profound paradox.
Right. How do we rewire our brains to fear missed compounding more than we fear a temporary market dip? Think about the implications of that question the next time you review your portfolio. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.